Okay. Do we see my presentation?
I do.
Excellent. Great. How many? We got 11 people on, so not bad. Good afternoon, good evening. I'm assuming everybody's in Rochester, although these days that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Welcome to RocPy, Rochester's one and only Python users group, and also the best. Let's see next. Oh, that's why the font's needed. Whoops. Yeah, so this
We're just that much more important now.
Yeah, wow, that looks terrible. Yeah, so we've been around for quite a long time now. I think since 2012, was it?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, we're looking at 8 years. And there are a bunch of us. Dave Rhodes, who is mysteriously in the ether. Josh.
It rotates.
What's that?
The group rotates.
The group rotates. Josh, he's the pillar of our group. I'm here. Emily, and her name is unfortunately cut off. I think that's it, right? Is that who we really consider?
Yeah.
We have those in absentia, ex officio, like Ralph Bean and Remy, and I feel like there's someone else there, but I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, you guys make up the group. The organizers only do so much. We just sort of prop it up so you guys can join and hang out with us. Our mission is to promote, protect, advance Python, and to support and facilitate the growth of a local community of Python programmers. We support each other here. It's nice to have the global community, but then again, it's sort of even, when we're dealing with people on the internet, it's still abstraction. We're still strangers. In town, we get to see each other's face and talk to each other, get to know each other, and we network. I mean, that's really helpful. We have a wide variety of abandoned ways of talking with us. Maybe these days I should really resurrect IRC. I literally say that every time. We have a really out-of-date website, and but we really work through Meetup. We do have a GitHub that I think very rarely gets updated. Yep. But Meetup is really how we're organizing everything. But primarily, that's not that important. We're here to get together in person or virtually in person, as the case may be today. And we're always looking for people wanting to help. Because, again, we provide the structure, but we need people to provide content. And we can only provide so much content and before we get burnt out. And we know you guys have a lot to contribute. You guys are interesting, do great stuff, and we want to hear about it. And we don't care if it's not polished or ready to go or production ready. It's ideas and thoughts and the technologies you're working in. And that's what makes it interesting to everybody. I don't even remember what we did last time. So it's been a few months already because, wait, we skipped December.
We did. And we skipped January.
Skipped January.
So that was the first time we've ever skipped a month outside of December.
Wow. Wait, so did we meet in February? I think I missed a meeting.
Oh, we skipped February, we skipped last month. Wow, my months are all screwed up now.
I know, yeah.
We skipped last month.
So we missed March, but
right.
We must have been a February
would be that
meeting,
month,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know what we had.
What were you calling Josh earlier? You were calling them the pillar?
Yeah.
He's the pillar of our group. Yeah.
The salt pillar.
Salt pillar.
The mind slowly slips away. I'm just getting old.
Jeez. Well, tonight's episode, Josh is going to be talking about, refresh my memory,
Lambda and Lambda layers for sharing code between Lambda functions.
Okay, and I know what words are. I don't think I know exactly what all that means, and that's what I'm excited to hear about today.
Yep.
All right, thanks. Anyways, thank you for being here today, and there we go. Yeah, if you want to contact us, We have an email address. We have a website contact form, which I assume still works. Meetup is also another way of contacting us. Email, text, Zoom, whatever it may be. Let us know if you want to participate. Do we have any questions? Okay, no questions are good. And I pass it on to Josh.
All right. So I'm going to be showing a best practice way of working with and deploying Lambda functions. So high level, Lambda, you can think of it as a highly specialized container. So it's a block of code that runs in a Docker container in AWS, and when you think about it, it's really okay. What is a web application that you have running out on a server? It's a block of code. You could theoretically put an entire say Django website into a Lambda and have it running. It's just, you can think of it as like a virtual directory on a web server, and it's an endpoint, and you can sprawl that endpoint out to whatever kind of routing you want beyond that. There's a lot more to it there, and actually the Lambda itself is not by default exposed to the web. It is literally just a piece of code. Think console application, a piece of code running on a server. And then you can take that and wire it up into, in AWS, they call it the API gateway. So that piece of code is basically often used as glue between one service and another. So the tool of choice that I have been using recently is Visual Studio Code. And Visual Studio Code has a very nice, though it does still have some rough edges, AWS toolkit, and I've been finding the limits of it recently. So AWS toolkit leverages, I'm going to bring up, so AWS toolkit leverages the AWS CLI. So AWS has a CLI that can access all of their APIs. So any of their services you can manipulate through this AWS CLI. So if I wanted to say their S3 buckets, so AWS S3 LS, I have different accounts that I connect to, so this is one of them. Well, that's interesting. It might help if I spelled it right. One moment. Two-factor for everything, people. It's worth it. It's annoying, but it's worth it. So I just listed out all of the, basically all of the root folders. They call them buckets in S3 in this particular account. So then beyond that, there is another wrapper for AWS CLI called SAM. That is the serverless object model. And so AWS employs a infrastructure as code model that's called CloudFormation, and you can define any AWS service, whether it be infrastructure or like a queue or a server or a stream, and you can define it in CloudFormation. Well, SAM takes wraps both CloudFormation and the AWS CLI in that it is a superset of CloudFormation. Anything you can do in CloudFormation, you can do in SAM. And SAM gives you some shortcuts to defining things like Lambdas. It specializes in Lambdas and wiring up a Lambda to an API gateway or some of the other common use things that you can do with Lambda. I linked to the SAM and I believe that AWS CLI, but I linked to a few different resources in the meetup. But the documentation out there for AWS is pretty open and pretty thorough. I don't know how I see there's people, there's the chat.
That's just me, Josh. Don't worry about it.
You got it? Oh, you
Yeah,
got that?
I'll monitor the chat and let you know if.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have, so what I'm going to be working with largely via the AWS toolkit is SAM. So in VS Code here, I can create, once you have the toolkit installed, you have all of the many AWS functions that they offer to help facilitate creating and managing AWS applications. So I'm going to create a new AWS SAM application. I'm going to do this Python. Just use a basic hello world. And the name of the application, I'll just do a SAM. All right, so now here, oh. Try that again. There we go. Okay. So as you can see here, we have a few different folders and just the basics of a project. This template, this is, yeah, I'm going to just do this. Whoops. I think I hit the.
Yeah, we lost your screen share there.
Accidentally hit the wrong thing. All right. So this is the SAM template, which is the superset of the CloudFormation. You just have some basic descriptions here. You have the ability to add parameters. Here, let me open.
I can just see your background. I don't think I can see the VS Code.
Oh, sorry. I chose the wrong monitor. the wrong screen.
It's a great background, though.
Oh, well, thank you. Why are you not doing this? Oh, I think I have to stop it first. It's not cooperating. I want you, yes, share.
Okay, we see your visual code now.
Okay, good. The stop is now on my other screen, but as long as everybody can see VS Code and the empty text editor, yes?
Yep, I could.
Cool. All right.
Folks
So-
can thumbs up and do basic reactions too if they don't want to say anything.
So this is an example of this is a active project we have. Just wanted to show you can pass parameters so that you can parameterize the templates to control aspects of it. Generally, the primary use is setting tags on the different resources you create. Globals, just settings that will go across resources, and then you have your list of resources here in the template over here. You'd get the one resource right at the moment, which is the Lambda in the Hello World folder. And this handler here is just a pointer to the function within it, within this app, Lambda handler. So you'll see here, let's bring, I do this, yeah. So you can see this is really just folder, the standard Python path to the methods, or like including any, when you do an import. Then you say what kind of code is within it, and the events for that function. This is a uniquely SAM syntax, where normally you would have to explicitly set up the API gateway and wire up references between your function and API gateway, where this is a shorthand to be able to say, open up, produce a URL that will allow me to hit this Lambda, and I want to give it the path hello, allow the method of get. And then down here, you'll see it output what that URL is. And the ARNs are the unique identifier for within your account, what the unique identifier of whatever resource it happens to be. So right at the moment, I will show you, I can build this and I can show you what the output of it looks like. SAM build. To be able to run this command, you have to have Docker desktop installed, but you shouldn't have to do anything other than have it there. So it behind the scenes builds the container. And one of the things you have to realize, just understand about all this, is even though you're dealing in an uncompiled Python context, it still needs to compile the template. So you still need to have a build process for your Lambda, even if you're not, even with Python. So then we can say local invoke. If I had more than one Lambda here, I would have to here say what that Lambda function name is, but because I have only one, I can just say simply local invoke. And this is the output that you see down here. So this started up the container and executed my Lambda function over here. Nothing real special, but what you can now do, because this is all defined here, is to say G for guided. So it'll step you through and ask how you want all of the parameters and configuration. And so this is, SAM will produce what's called a CloudFormation stack, which is all of the resources that are represented by this template. And so you got to give the stack a name. The AWS region, AWS is divided up into many different regions where they have server farms. And so you always have to say which region you want to be deploying into. Leave that. Do you want to confirm the changes before deploy? I have never bothered confirming the changes. Right or wrong, it's always seemed to work. But if you're having issues and you need a little bit more debugging insight, this is something that you can pay attention to if you need to. I generally just say no to this. Allow SAM CLI IAM role creation. So IAM is identity and access management. In AWS, it's all of their permissions. So if I don't know why you would ever say no to this, or why you would be able to say no to this, because it is going to be creating things. So you would think, I always just leave this as yes, because it seems like it would fail if it couldn't manage roles. And then this next question is saying, do you want to save these choices that you just made? And so the next time you go through it, you have the option of not doing a guided. You can just say SAM deploy, and it will even save your profile. So you can literally just say SAM deploy once you have that SAM config TOML file. So now it is creating the CloudFormation template and executing it out in the account. Generally takes a little bit. It's certainly not instantaneous, but it's doing a whole lot of stuff out there for you. So it'd be surprising if it wasn't.
Josh, there's a comment in the chat.
What's up?
Lee, asking, so you also created a MFA code earlier?
Yes. The multi-factor, you will have to enter your multi-factor. If you have multi-factor enabled, you will have to enter it many times. It's depending on what you're doing, sometimes it is cached for up to an hour. Other times, each time you do a deploy, or it doesn't always cache the MFA token across all the different operations. So yes, MFA seeing as you're working with a very powerful and potentially very expensive resources, it's highly recommended that you enable MFA, even if it is a little bit annoying to have to keep entering codes.
Okay, thanks, Josh.
You're very welcome. I have gotten myself into trouble. I once left a Redshift cluster on, I think it was a Redshift data warehouse cluster, and ended up with a $1,500 bill that they very graciously credited me for after I told them I forgot and left it on and haven't touched it for a month and a half. Please help. And they very graciously refunded me and did not charge me for that. So if you ever do end up with a bill, you can go through, they have a very large bill that you're saying, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to do that. There is support tickets that you can open and they will review. And I've heard them sometimes just decreasing the bill, maybe not wiping it out completely, but they are lenient because there are some of these services that can get very expensive very quickly. So here is the URL out in the world. And there's my hello world. So that is out there. Can also, I believe, yeah. So also, if you want to tear down everything when you're using either CloudFormation or SAM templates, is also very easy. You just got to remember what you call it. RocPy test. Here, I'll show you. That's not what I'm supposed to do. Oh, I know why. Wrong account. I have one or two. So, yeah, I just took a look at the time. I will speed this up and get to the layers post haste. I just want to show you what was created. So here is the application. An application, as opposed to functions, is a collection of resources. You can see here the serverless API gateway, REST API, and the function, both created. So that's that. Back in here, to create a layer now for a shared library, let's say, it can be what, this name can be whatever you want, it doesn't matter. I want that folder. And then, but within it, this does matter. Python, if you were doing a shared library with a Lambda function written in a different language, this, like say Node.js, you would do shared layer 1 / Node.js and then put your libraries in that. But so we're in Python, we create a Python folder, and in here we say just mylib.py def get stuff shared stuff. All right. One of the tricks that it took me a little bit to figure out for VS Code at least was how do you extend the Python path so that you can reference mylib, because right at the moment, if I go in here and try to import okay, that has not worked for me previously. Is that actually working? Huh. Well, that's fun. I spent a couple of days trying to figure out like why this was squiggly in general. But it's just seeming to work now because this is a reverse presentation glitch. So what I had to, I'll show you what I had to do to get it working previously. So here you can manipulate the environment variables with a .env file. And in here, I'm just going to pull up an existing. So you can set the Python path. Now watch this actually break it instead of helping. So this is what I had to do to get it working the last time, which is set the Python path and then set the path within the project to the shared layer. So if you do have a scenario where you can't access this, I'm very confused right at the moment. Anyways, if you do have, oh, you know what? I think I know what the, yeah, I have a another system-wide setting that I think if I changed that I was playing around with, I think that if I rename this, call it 2. Go back here. Yeah. Yeah. So here we go. Now, if I close these guys, I'm going to leave this as layer 1 just for the moment so we get squiggly. So now if I go in here, this should, it's going to make a liar out of me. All right. Well, I don't know why it's not, I'm going to do this. Why I still think it thinks it can find it. Anyways. Oh. it's working. We're gonna go with it. So now the template. We need to update the template. I'm going to steal the syntax. So you have this resource that is AWS Service Layer version, and basically all this is a pointer to that folder and what the runtime is. So in here, even though in Visual Studio Code here, it seems to be able to find my lib. Ah, there we go. That's what I was expecting to see. All right, so I believe that this is yellow right at the moment, even though I have this as saying layer 2, because I did not start the environment. I did not start code with this set properly. So now this is saying I can't find my lib. All right, so we have this set. Make sure everything is saved. This I'm going to just say helper layer. This is going to be shared layer 2. The layer name and description are just things that it will display in the AWS console back on the website. And then in here, need to add the layers reference. I'm gonna make sure that this guy is the same name. So this ref here is a helper function of CloudFormation that says, for this reference, get me the ARN. Ref is essentially the ARN, although it's a more specific, unique identifier than the ARN. For layers, a layer does have an ARN, but what more uniquely identifies a layer is the ARN plus the version number, and that's what ref gives you here. There's also a ATTR, get attribute, helper function that you can use you'll see very commonly used to get ARNs, but this will get you, I use ref more than get attribute because for things like this, because there are instances where ARN isn't quite enough to uniquely identify the particular instance that you're talking about. So here, layer 2, good. All right, I'm gonna save all of this, restart code. This should be happy again. Not happy. All right, fine. I will put it back to shared layer 1. One of the most difficult parts was getting all of the pathing, getting this environment, the Python path specific to the project, so that you can have your code split up into different folders, not all in the same folder, because what you're doing when you're creating a layer is actually another container. So when you build the container for your Lambda, it starts with a base container, and then when you adds in the Lambda, you're basically creating a new container with your Lambda added in. So with what the layer is, you have your base container, it adds in the layer to create another container, and then uses that as a base container for your Lambda. So it's all separated, and that's hence the name layers. So the layer basically gets its own container version of the container, and then you layer on, you use that as the base container for when you build when it builds the Lambda. So now let's go back in here, make sure this looks happy again. Yep. Now, interesting. Yeah, here, I'm gonna restart. Even without this environment variable, the SAM template will still build. The only thing that this gets you is the IntelliSense, the ability to drill into the code and have the IDE. Really? Well, we're gonna test that we have everything configured properly. All right, so that was happy. And here I am going to, and so I'm going to show you that you can, that. Yeah, okay. Okay, so now I will go, now I have my Lambda, make sure everything is saved, good. I need to rebuild because I just made a change. And I should be able to just simply, oh, yeah, I should be able to just simply do deploy here. Oh, yeah, why is it? Oh, do I have it in, yep, here. Trying to be too tricky. Do that again. Deploy that. So now you can see that it's adding that Lambda layer in there. It's called, and it's a Lambda layer version. That's that version number means a lot because you can have different versions of different layers out there for say staging and production, or if you're doing a red-green deployment of just a few different instances mixed in with the majority of your current instances just to test them out, you can have multiple versions of them all running at the same time. So this guy should still look the same. Actually, I should have changed this, but I'll show you how. So this still says hello world. So it ran successfully. And make sure we're still looking. So here, now we have both the function and we see a new Lambda layer out here. And here, we can see down here our mylib get stuff. So that means when it executed, it did execute that, and we can see that print statement. If we go into our logs, shared stuff. So that is how you can structure. It's very straightforward. It's just the right folder structure and the right resource definitions. I will tell you that the getting the environment right so that it does the IntelliSense is a little bit of a challenge, but I think I've been mucking with my system too much, and so there's a setting in there that I believe I need to undo that might be causing some issues. But that is the core of what it means to utilize layers. So we could have another folder in here that is another Lambda with a different app pi and a different Lambda, and import the same lib. And as long as the layer is included in the function definition, then you'll have access to that once it deploys. Is there any questions? I'm looking in the chat.
I don't know where Richard went. So, Josh, what are you using this for?
So we're using it for all sorts of things, from like polling to extract information out of one service and push it into another, to backings for websites. Like you can use this basically like a controller method for a website to process a post from a form or from a piece of JavaScript. So you can use it for anything that you would use a server application for. The best use of them are very focused. Like I said before, you could theoretically put an entire application, an entire web Django application within a Lambda. You're limited to, forget what the storage limitation is on them. There is a storage limitation, but I think it's like, I'd have to look it up. I can't remember, but it's not insignificant. You can definitely store a lot of information in a Lambda, but you're not going to do a massive application in a Lambda. And you're also limited to a 5-minute execution time. So any one trigger of a Lambda can't run longer than 5 minutes. So you're not going to be, or it's not recommended to try to process streaming data through it. So you want to do an iterative process, an iterative execution. Anything that you're going to want to run longer than 5 minutes, Lambda is not the thing. Lambda is for things that you really want to have kind of chunked up into little small bites that can be fairly independent. But that's just good coding practice. More often than not, is bring it down to just the thing that you really care about, and don't try and do too much all at once. That makes sense?
Sure.
And it really, you can really think of it like a console app. It's this headless application, headless bit of code that has that entry point and the output that it produces, the return of the function, and the print statements in the function.
So Josh, may I ask that? So did you create a AAM for this one, and then after you use after you finish your work, and then you just cancel that IAM user? So in case that you want call
by default, the this doesn't have any custom IAM roles or policies. I can show you a template that does have them. So this guy that I was showing before, we have a bunch of policy. Here's some custom policies at the bottom, and some custom roles. But you're also going to see, so the basic Lambda execution role is supplied by Amazon. So if that's all you, if all you need is the basic Lambda execution role, Sam takes care of that part for you. But in this instance, the template that you're seeing right here, these roles will be created uniquely for this CloudFormation stack, for this SAM template. And they don't go away after the template goes away. They go away if you remove the stack, but they're there for the life of the things that need them, unless you explicitly remove them.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, IAM is a beast. If something goes wrong, that's usually where it goes wrong. Is not quite having the right policy or the right service role, that kind of thing. Any other questions? So yeah, that's we're having a lot of fun with how different ways you can twist this. We're right at the moment looking at a pretty fun project of moving information from CloudWatch, where it's the default for all of the logging and metrics from all the different services, looking to move information out of that into an Elasticsearch cluster for one of our clients, where we're utilizing a bunch of queues and SNS notification pipelines. So it's great for glue, for saying, okay, I have glue between that HTTP endpoint and S3, or glue between CloudWatch and Elasticsearch. It's when you just need a little bit of logic in between two pieces, Lambda's perfect. And there's also the very similar concepts, also GCP and Azure. The Azure calls them functions instead of lambdas. I'm not sure what GCP calls them, but yeah, this is the hottest thing outside of AI in the cloud world.
So I only have one last question.
What's up?
Looking at Richard's window, is that one of those talking fishes on his wall?
I bet it probably is.
It's actually a ceramic fish that my wife painted. It was part of some local small competition. So these unpainted fish were passed out and people were asked to paint them. And my wife painted mine in some space theme, and I call it the Salmon of No Doubt. I reference to Hitchhiker's Guide stuff, yeah.
I like it.
Well, we thought it might start singing and dancing.
Not in
No,
this
it's
house.
just me tonight.
Yeah.
So does anyone, with all of this home time that we've gotten, has anyone else been working on anything interesting that they would want to talk about?
Well, like I said, if I could get permission to actually show you the device sitting on the desk behind me, I'd do so. And we are doing little Python scripts to control some things in it. But
How are you using the scripts?
just basically to move information around inside the device.
Gotcha.
Nothing exciting.
That's cool.
But it's all written in C++.
Just Python for gluing stuff together.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, it's good for that. So Rich, did you have anything that you wanted, that you had to present?
Well, I've had a few things I wanted to show. Most of it's teaching related. I'm feeding a child at the moment while we're doing this meeting. So when I get a minute,
That is our life right at the moment.
That's right.
Home life has invaded, and we have invaded home life.
That's right.
Well,
So if someone wants to
wait a
talk about
second.
their thing first.
Richard, you said you're teaching a child presently, and you know, Josh's face flashed up on the screen. You know.
I know.
I'm logged in upstairs when my computer's recording the meeting, and I'm on my phone right now, following along as he finishes his bottle, and then yeah, I'll be happy to show off something called GradeScope that I've been using for grading students with Python unit tests.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How are you using the unit tests?
There's a framework that they provide, and it's kind of cool. It's complicated, but it works for basic, keeps the students on the path, because they can go awry very quickly because they don't follow instructions. They only they only care about instructions when they hit a roadblock. It's like, why can't I do this? Well, because you didn't follow my instructions and do this. So yeah, I can show that off briefly if you give me a few minutes, and
yeah. All good.
Someone else wants to start talking. I'll join up in a bit.
Okay. I can talk a little bit more about what I've done here. One of the things that I played around with that ended up not being a great idea was you can, here, I'll bring up the template to show, you can create separate templates and reference to separate templates. It seems like a great idea. Show you what I was doing. Multiple applications. So I'll just open it up. All right, so in here, starts out typically, but then down here, you have an application that just references another template. This seems like a great idea.
We can't see it.
Oh, sorry.
I think.
How's that?
Yep, that looks good.
All right. So yeah, just starts out normal. The only real difference is down here, the resource types. I have 3 applications, and so these are just more templates. So in app 1, we have another template. It's same structure, same stuff. So it seems like a great idea because you'd be able to split up large templates if you have a large application and have different templates representing different aspects of a larger application, but so it works. Like this application here with these 3 applications within it, all of this, I can do a SAM build, SAM deploy, and everything's functional, but the debugging and the debugging of the deployments, if something in one of these sub applications goes wrong, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt. Like you can't do local invokes against things within the sub applications. So you can only deploy it out into a test environment and try executing it. So unless you have a really good reason to do this, I would not recommend it, but this is another option out there. And as the tooling around this gets more fleshed out, like I submitted a feature request to be able to invoke the Lambda functions, like, so this function 1, which is within that test app 1. So test app 1 template has this function 1. I want to be able to say app1 dot function 1 from the command line to get and test and invoke that function within a sub application. Right at the moment, that does not work. But it does. But all of this template syntax works to deploy if you do find the need. Another interesting thing you'll see here is like the main reason why I wanted to do this is like I have here defined a global layer, something that I can define once, and then up here you can see I passed that reference into the template as one of the parameters. So here it's really that those ARNs or reference values, they're all just strings. You can just treat it like a string and pass it around. And then so down here, you can see I just use that value that I passed in as another layer. And this all works great. It's the same syntax as referencing the local layer within this application. So this function references both that layer that is in the base template and this layer that's in this template. Also you can see here these are 2 different uses of ref. This ref gets the value of the ARN plus version number for the layer, whereas this ref gets the value of that parameter. So ref is something that you have to maybe pay attention to the documentation a little bit more on, because it's a little bit more obscured as to what exactly you're getting. But I've found that it's almost always what you actually need, as opposed to going explicitly after the ARN. I have yet to find a place where ref doesn't work. But this is, here you go. Here's an example where I used get attribute to get the ARN for this role. I probably could have also just used ref Lambda role and not gone after the ARN directly. Anybody have any questions around that, around passing around references? What's for dinner, Rich?
I turned on my camera here real quick. Show and tell here for a second.
What you got?
So I can't show you this very closely because I'll get in trouble potentially.
Okay.
But this right here is a boroscope. And basically this is a little camera connected to a huge long coax cable
Yeah,
that somebody would feed into a turbine
gotcha.
to look for damage inside the turbine, you know, for an airplane engine
Yep.
or a power plant or something. Here's one of my many Raspberry Pis that I have. You can see my one monitor over here. I've actually got 6 monitors. in my
Looks
office.
like a fun little shop.
Yeah. I guess that's why they pay me the big bucks, you know.
Nice.
It's pretty nice. Where in your house is that?
Well, I actually have way too big of a house because my kids now are 31 and 29.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's me and my Great Dane now, but I have a room that I converted into my office and my workshop. So
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, basically your house can be, you know, a workshop all around, wherever you want it.
yeah. You can see all my for doing wire wrapping and stuff like that. I've got all sorts of equipment. So
Cool.
Very nice. Okay. Yeah, let me go up and what's for dinner, John? It was a bottle of formula for my 6-month-old.
I figured something of the like.
Yeah. Yeah, give me a second. Let me head back up.
Okay, here I am back here. I have way too much connectivity options. And
You're all over the place.
okay, let me see what I can show off here. That close up all these windows. So I'm using a variety of tools for my remote teaching now with U of R. So there's first quit that. Using Zoom, obviously, Apple Keynote, my web browser, Panopto for screen recording and recording lectures and so on and so forth. I'm using Slack, though unofficially. And here we go. Okay, let me share my screen and see what much I can show off without violating FERPA laws, student privacy laws. Let's try that one. Okay, do you see my desktop?
I do.
Okay, let me stop this thing here. Okay, so Gradescope. So I was curious because I don't know why, but I love the color scheme of PowerShell. I don't know,
Yep.
I know it's vanilla, but that blue and that white and that font, for some reason, it reminds me of something that I love the look of it. And I couldn't figure out what font they use. Well, I haven't really looked that closely.
Right, yeah.
I guess I could just go to my Windows machine here and take a peek. But so there's a website called Gradescope that, among other things, does automated grading of lots of things, or assisted grading. So there's programming assignments that can be auto-graded, but they also do things like uploading exams that are scanned or do online assignments that are graded. So you can have collaborative grading using TAs, for example. But that's not what I want to talk about. That's just manual stuff with collaborative groups of people. And let's say, for example, let me pause my sharing just for a bit here. And again, let's share. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude here, but just in case. I know there are rules against all this sort of stuff. Simulation and design, that's the what I'd like to do. Okay, let me find myself in here as a simple test. Should be in here somewhere. There I am. No submission. All right, test autograder. That'll do. Okay, you won't have to see any student names. So here they have a framework that basically uses Docker. In fact, let me run through the process of setting up the automated testing. If I go back here, you still see my desktop, right? Oh, no, you can't. It says my screen sharing's paused. I wanted to share everything. Okay, now you see my desktop.
Yes.
And if I go to my class materials, I go to quizzes, and I pick the thing that's relevant here. It is simulation and design. And I'll show you what the quiz is. Let's see if I can bring it up. Quizzes. Simulation. Now this is the quiz I want the kids to work on. It's a basic probabilistic roll the dice kind of thing. Very simple. So I want them to write two functions, one called simDice with one parameter n, and a main function. And the main function's only purpose is to call simDice with the value of 1000 by whatever way they want to do that. And the specification with simDice is that I wanted to do frequency counting. What is so I want them to track the frequency of the sums of the two dice that are rolled. So the sums will range, of course, from minimum of 2 to a maximum of 12. Because you roll at minimum 1 pip per die and a maximum of 6 pips per die from 2 to 12. And how many, what is the frequency of all of that? And the trick here is I'm using a list where the index of the list is the sum that we are looking for. So index positions 2 through 12 represent the sums. 0 and 1 index positions are invalid because you can't have a sum of 0 or a sum of 1 between two dice. And that's it. So I told them to use ran range. I'm pretty clear. You give a lot of hints here. And I want them to run n number of trials, etc. So I lay it out here what to do. And I tell them, I even give them starting code. And believe me, I give them the starting code and they still screw it up. And you can see my frequency list. So every frequency here from positions 2 to 12 are initialized to 0, and I put -1 for invalid positions. And I want them to return two things: the sum that occurs most often, the max sum, and the frequency that max sum occurs. And that's it. So, but how do I test this? Well, it's a simple enough program that I can test most aspects of it with some amount of reasonableness. And the autograder in Gradescope is a Docker-based application that it's custom to them. So if I look up Gradescope autograder, and they have autograder documentations that are published on GitHub. Read the docs. You can read up all about it here. And they can do automated testing, I believe, for Java and maybe some other languages. But Python's primarily the one I care about. So following their instructions, you can create a structure for their autograder. And let me do this in list mode here. And hopefully you guys can still see this with some amount of clarity. There's a JSON output that outputs the results of the tests. This is mainly meant for the Gradescope web interface, but it's still enough to read for you if you want to see it. I've highly customized this to my purposes, and here are my unit tests down here. I have basic checks that I consider universal. In fact, you can see that they're symlinks because I share these tests among other quizzes I have. Did they post the right file name? I don't know why it's not loading for some reason. I even check their PEP8 style. I complain if it's massively bad. It's kind of, I don't tell them, but I kind of force them to make it perfect, even though, what did they say? foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds sort of thing. So I don't want them to be foolishly consistent with their style, but in this course, what the hell, let's force it on them. And what really matters here is the output and integration tests. And let me put this in something that's more reasonable, like them. Okay, and then let's do that one here. Okay, so the integration test is basically, I want to test that they have a function called simdice, that it takes one parameter and it runs the way I expect. And I probably can use like the inspect module and other stuff like that. I did this over a year ago and I've revised it recently, so I'm sure there's more I can do. And in fact, I had to amend how I did certain things, but you can see it's pretty gunky, but it does work. So the unit test in particular is here, the test integration, and there's the setup. And I'll kind of run through it. It's kind of hard to read by itself, but I'll tell you what I'm doing. So the student submits a file, and the file name has to be very specific because that's what I want. I want this file is called quiz_simulation_design.py. It's my format. So then I call some function of grade scopes here. I call submission check. Run some, I forgot what it does exactly. I guess just make sure some files are what they're supposed to be. Then I look for the Dunder name is equal to Dunder main check, which most of them don't even understand because I try to explain namespaces to them. And I'm doing just a straight up regex. Maybe that's not the best way to do it, but it seems to work. I'm basically looking through the code that I'm open. So I open the code file. I literally read the code file. I just replace new lines and I just do a quick pattern match. So, like I said, brute force. And then I import their quiz as a module. Because once I determine they have that Dunder main check in place, it's my protection knowing that I can import their code as a straight up module without it running anything and thus blowing up my, my tests. It's not a guarantee, but it's close enough that it should work. And you can also grade based on, like partial credit. If this test passes, they get 70 points out of 100. So I have a couple global variables and I set score values and then I start checking aspects of the module. So their quiz I just imported doesn't have an attribute called simdice, the very function I'm looking for, very specific about the name. It's not there, I've raised an exception and they get kicked out. Otherwise they get 30 points partial out of that 70 points for this whole unit test. And then I was on a path of doing all sorts of namespace inspection and messy testing of stuff because I wanted to override rand range so that I could control the randomness of their quiz, right? I wanted to make sure the quiz was doing what I would expect if, it always rolled 3 for each die. Well, I was doing all this and it occurred to me, wait a minute, I can just import random and in both ways. I can do the selective import from random import rand range or just import random. I did both. If I go scroll to the top, I hope you guys can see this. And you can see here, where is it? Oh, down here. So I import random 2 different ways, purposely so. I store the original random rand range function just in case. Well, actually I do use it. And then I wrote a fake rand range function here. I have my typical star args and star KW args. I have a special variable here to indicate that they did indeed call rand range, and therefore my fake one after I overrode it. So I know they called the right function. So I set a global variable in my test. And then I just do a simple thing. I just try. If they screw up calling the true rand range, the result of which I do not care about. I just want to know that they actually tried calling rand range correctly, because I'm going to override it anyways. As you can see here, return 3. So even though I'm invoking it and just printing out an exception if it occurs, I don't care about the result from the true rand range function. Then I control the output. It's always going to be 3. So that's my definition of fake ran range. Then I override ran range to be fake ran range. And inside the random module, I also override ran range if I fake one. And now the little side effect of imports in Python is once you import something once, anytime you import it again in the future, it will not re-import it unless you do something like reload or something like that. So an import only occurs once, no matter where in the tree of files in your project, you might be doing that same import again. So I'm relying on that feature by importing first before anyone else gets in the way, and overriding the functions with my functions. What do you call that? Monkey patching or something?
Yep. Yep.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
Is that the term? Monkey patch?
Yes, I believe so.
It feels like a monkey wrote it anyway, so
Yeah.
might as well. So then, once I call their code, right, now back in my test, I've imported their module, and here we go. I call their sim_dice function inside the quiz that I just loaded. And all things work. I override. Every die rolls a 3. If they tell it to run for 1,000 rolls, I get the sum of 6, 3 and 3 for each die is the most common sum, 1,000. That's it. And that should be exactly what I get for max here and frequency. And I do some other basic tests like, hey, if you screw this up, maybe you reverse your return values or whatever. I check for that here. I'm sorry, the lines are really long. My pet page style's off the window a little bit there. And that's one of my tests. And it works. It catches a lot of the grades, and kids are really put on the path. I like it a lot better than paper-based quizzes. And I've been forced to use it because of the disruption, as they call it. And everyone's had to come up with new ways. And I didn't want to give up the quizzes. And this was a good time to bring this back. I tried it last summer for a short stint with like 12 students, 15 students in my summer course. And this semester, I have 189 students, something like that. And only about 145 of them actually took it, because U of R went to what they call a satisfactory fail, pass-fail grading. And I think a lot of students just don't care at this point. I think a lot of the motivation has kind of gone out of their sails. And I've got a good chunk of people who are just not taking the quiz. And it's only 10% of their grade. And the output test here, let me bring that up, is fairly similar. Although I don't know why I have fake random. It's been a while since I've looked at it. And oh yeah, so typically a lot of their testing doesn't involve a lot of this introspection, this code, mangling that I'm doing, and they just use the p_expect module. Do they? Maybe they are. Well, I'm definitely using it. So I'm basically running their program in this test. I'm literally executing through a spawn, p_expect.spawn, and I'm looking for strings coming to and from their program as it runs. So I'm just running their program now as an executable, as you would do so from the terminal. And I'm not looking at the output very closely. I'm just literally pattern matching a very specific thing. If I see the word sum appear, I'm like, they got it. It's close enough. Something appears. But if anything else happens, like they get weird exceptions or timeouts, I catch a whole string of them. And this is a pretty light test, and not a whole lot happens here. So once we have these tests in place, then I can go to simulation and design right here, your autograder. And I can say, I'll replace the autograder. Let's run through the process. And I go here, quizzes, simulation design, autograder. Autograder.zip. So they want a zip file of basically that structure you see below. And I choose and update autograder. Pardon? And then you can see the Docker image status. So it's building a Docker image. Takes a few minutes, and it's going to start presenting some output, I assume. Usually it's quicker than that. Maybe their servers are slow today. No, it's expanded out. Okay. In the meantime, though, I can certainly test my own thing. Oh, there you go. It's nothing exciting, right? It's literally doing apt-get. It's building an Ubuntu image. Looks like it's using Bionic. It's unusually slow. And once they build that Docker image, then you can run your tests. But I already have one loaded, so I can do it now. And I'll pick my submission, quiz simulation design.py. So I have the correct file name. I upload it. And yep, successfully submitted. Well, I'm the instructor, of course it is. And the autogrid is running. And I intend to use this for my other programming projects going forward now, since I've sort of broke through the barrier of most of this, like projects and so forth. It's just great for catching them on the stupid stuff they just won't read the rules about. And it looks like it worked. You can see the various tests, okay? So check for correct file name, done. Correct file name. If I had the wrong file name, all the tests would fail. Testing for sim dice function, 70 out of 70. It worked. I got the expected output. Okay, running my code as an actual executable on the command line through pexpect. Yep, most common sum of 1,000 rows is 7. I'm not overriding ran range here. This is it running normally. And for most people, 7 really is going to be the most common based on how, I guess, Python's ran range works over time. So most people will get 7. And then my PEP8 style checking, I don't take any points off. Although I would probably do some sort of threshold or maybe some graduated point deductions. Something like, hey, if you get enough style errors, I'm not quite sure why errors and warnings are a thing with style, but if I did something like that, I could keep them on the straight and narrow with some reasonableness. Like some lines can be long, I get it. We leave long lines every once in a while, but I can't stand it when you don't do the right spacing around equal signs or you don't space around your comments properly. And of course, syntax check. I'm not sure why they happen in that order, but nonetheless, everything will fail if you have a syntax error. And I got a 100 out of 100, not bad. That's really what I need from the students for a quiz they would spend 15 minutes working on in class by pen and paper, which I'm sure, though, if they do it this way, they take way more than 15 minutes. But I think it's more instructive. Anyways, so that's my quick little thing on that. And you can see the build output of their autograder. It builds a whole image. And I had nothing to do with the Docker image. This is all of them, part of their infrastructure. And finally, it puts in my grade scope stuff, which is my test stuff, rather. Somewhere around this range of stuff. I don't know if it's completely obvious. Maybe before that. But regardless, it tags it, and boom, I have my tests. Anyways, any questions about that? Any thoughts?
That's super cool.
Yeah, I like it. It's I think I'm the only one in the CS department that's using it, but one of our classroom technologies guys were like, oh, we got this new thing called Gradescope, and we're going to show it off. I'm like, okay, this sounds interesting. I'm asking questions, and it took me a while to warm up and got to it. Saved my bacon with midterms, not programming related, but we had our midterms, and we had like 190 pages of midterm exams that were like 10 pages each, and we needed them graded. And I was like, oh God, I don't just want to just give up the midterm. So my grad TA scanned them all using a special scanner that they have and uploaded all the scanned exams into Gradescope. And Gradescope does a bunch of, let's use our fancy terms of machine learning and AI here, but basically using that to auto-recognize names, student IDs, various regions, tagging the exams to the right student in the roster, and you can grade the questions and have a shared rubric between all the TAs so that everyone's on the same page about how point deductions work. And it was pretty awesome. And in short order, we got 190 exams graded through distributed effort, people across,
awesome.
across disparate regions. So it's proven to be a pretty nice service, though there are a lot of limitations I've been noticing that I want, but they have a Trello board I've been looking at, and the features I'm asking for are just not on there. So I don't think I'm one of those people like, I need to see this. How come you can't do this? And apparently no one else asks. So like at the UofR, you have an API for your services? No. Okay, well, how the heck am I supposed to make my life easy? So I'll web scrape everything. So yeah, anyways. Anything else, folks? Any, how are we doing the time? Ooh, not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah. Anybody else on board? Anybody who's still here? You guys have any questions or anything you want to show off? I know Tom showed off some stuff. Mitch, Matt, Arthur, 585-455-7855. I don't know who that is. No.
All right.
Okay, cool.
Well, thank you, Rich.
That's actually
Josh?
my cell phone. This is the very first Zoom I've ever been on.
Oh.
So I dialed in with my phone, but I don't know if my speakers aren't, my mic is not working on my PC here. I'll have to investigate that. But so yeah, I'm on here twice actually.
Oh, that's
Once
okay.
is
I
me
was
and
on
once
twice
is my
myself with my phone and my computer. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Josh. It was a great talk. I
Well, thank you
have
very
some
much.
questions myself about all this, but I'm going to play around with it first.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions about it as you dig into it, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm happy to help.
So what are you guys using it for? Or at least as generic as you're
So
allowed to comment?
everything from supporting website, like being an actual replacement for the server side of a website, to sending off emails, to like just moving data from one place to another.
To quick
There's a
transactions, right?
Yeah. There's a whole lot of like events that you can hook them into. Like, so S3 is AWS's file storage, essentially, an object storage. It's not really like a file system, but it's just a place where you can upload files, kind of like an FTP. Well, you can hook into a file was uploaded to this folder and trigger a Lambda function.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And there's all sorts of different events like that.
Oh, that's kind of neat. It's probably great for things like REST APIs and stuff too, right?
Oh yeah, that's the primary use. And there is a little bit of like, if it's a thing that doesn't always run, like it is, if it's something that you need low latency and it's something that doesn't execute all that frequently, then it might not be the best option, because it is a container that does spin down when it's not used for X amount of time.
Oh, okay.
Now they have implemented some dedicated, I forget what term they use for it, but they do mitigate it now with, you have to pay a little bit more so to keep some instances warm. But if you just go with the standard setup, then if you need really low latency and very infrequent access, then you might want to look at some other options. But the general use case of an event happened, I need to fire off some code, whether that's an HTTP request or something hitting a queue, it's a great option.
Okay. Do they have like a free tier to experiment with?
Yep. And in fact, we just developed a website using Lambda and their low-cost EC2 instances that they call Light Sale. Light Sale is like $3.50 a month, $3.50 a month for the server.
Yeah.
And we have it basically just using that server as a front end. We used that instead of S3, which would have been even cheaper, because the people wanted a WordPress instance.
Yeah.
So I was like, fine, here, $350 a month, that's fine. But it's backed by like 4 different Lambda functions, a DynamoDB on NoSQL database, and interacting with like Microsoft Graph for Outlook calendars and all that. The only thing that costs any money because it gets so little usage is light sail.
Wow. So the database would cost money if there was access above a certain threshold?
Right. And like when you go into the calculator for DynamoDB, that starts at 1 gigabyte
Wow.
of data.
Okay. Not bad.
Now, you also get charged for the amount of data that passes through things, not just storage. But you have to be like thousands and thousands of requests a month. And this particular website was going to get maybe a few hundred hits in a month.
Right.
And so it's literally the only thing they're going to be paying for is that $350 or $3.50 a month to have that WordPress instance.
Kind of hard to say no to that. It's
Yeah,
more-
no, it's a great option. It works really well.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, I'm excited to try it out.
Yeah. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, will do. Hey, thanks, Josh.
Thank you,
Yeah.
and thank everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Yeah, that was great.
So one last thing, Richard,
Yeah.
you need to get the Grecian Formula 16 going there. Your students are getting to you.
You said the Grecian formula?
Yeah, that will darken the beard back up.
Oh.
That's just his wisdom showing through.
This is my wisdom stress.
Yeah,
Well, I was
I
thinking
have
it
a
was
little
more
bit of
than-
that going too.
Well, I've got a lot of it, and so does Rick. But no, I was thinking that your students were starting to get to you or something.
Students, yeah, well, I mean, they're not that bad, but it's both my wife and I work full time. My wife works from home as it is, and I do kind of half and half here and there. But having the kids home full time on top of it, the whole thing is a stressful ball of wax altogether. And
You look like you're up in an attic.
I am in an attic, indeed. This is my attic. It's part of my attic office. It's a little alcove that I turned into a dedicated Zoom station. That's why I put my books in the background so people can say, "Ooh, look at the guy. He's pretty studious." And like here are my Star Trek knickknacks. So I have my little comm badges, magnetic comm badges, right? And I have a toolbox to show that I do tooly things. And if you really want to see, it's like, okay, I got a box, like 3 boxes worth of like Raspberry Pis and assorted electronics that are completely a mess right now. But I have a
I was throwing
Top
off
here.
my Raspberry Pis earlier, so yeah.
Yeah, and my attic is currently in renovation. It's been my office. I've been slowly trying to clean it up from the previous owners. I never did anything with it, and I got to paint the walls and plaster some stuff. Anyways, yeah. So everyone, thank you for showing up.
Yes,
Appreciate
everybody, thank you.
it. Josh, thanks for giving the
See,
talk.
You're
here's
very
a
welcome.
Raspberry Pi camera that I haven't opened yet.
Let's see,
I bought one. I've
It's-
got to open it.
hold on.
sooner
It's
or later.
confusing us because it's picking up your audio and pinning your
Oh, is it?
phone rather than
Okay.
the video. There we go. Yeah. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, it's a Raspberry Pi camera in that box that I haven't opened.
Hmm.
Another camera,
Box.
box full of breadboard stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my little projects that it's kind of stalled was trying to do a multi-probe thermometer that I wanted to use for smoking meat, not tobacco. So I wanted to be able to say, can I monitor, 2 meats, or can I monitor the temperature of the air and a meat with this multi-probe thermometer and have a Raspberry Pi control it, or an Arduino or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have it working. I have a little analog to digital chip that I'm learning how to use, and it's a very common one. And if I get it working, I think it'd be worth talking about. There's some Python components to it. But my electronics kung fu is pretty weak, so.
Well, Raspberry Pi was named after Python, so.
Yeah, it's and I like to see some people using Arduino. I didn't realize Arduinos were that embedded. I thought they had more interface to them, like you would do with a Raspberry Pi, but they're
No.
really more low level, which sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, no, they're basically a hardware,
Yeah.
piece of hardware that you've
Yeah.
got to know how to breadboard together. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Folks,
Well, thank you, everybody.
yeah. I had this recorded. I guess one thing we should have asked people if they're okay with the recording being posted. So we'll probably have to check with people.
Yeah. We can. I'll send out a blast.
Okay. Great. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Have
Yeah.
a good night.
Excellent.
You too.
Thank you. Have a great night.
We'll see you. See you next month.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.